Marcus Rain considered himself a success. At 35, he was an executive at a prominent Chicago technology company, owned a luxury penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, and had a sports car that he proudly showed off to his friends. Marcus's life was built on the belief that success came from personal effort, and he often looked down on those he considered to be unmotivated or incompetent. The company's office had just moved to a new building on the city's south side, an area that was undergoing redevelopment but still had many social problems. Marcus was unhappy with the change. He didn't like having to walk through what he considered uncool neighborhoods to get to work, and he didn't like having to interact with people he considered underrated. On a Monday morning, Marcus stepped into the elevator of his office building, still grumpy from the traffic. There was already a woman of color standing in the elevator, wearing a smart business suit. She nodded and smiled politely at him, but Marcus just rolled his eyes and turned away, not bothering to respond. As the elevator started moving, the woman pressed a button for the 24th floor, the top floor of the building, where the company's board of directors was located. Marcus couldn't help but let out a snort. The 24th floor? Really? He said sarcastically. The cleaning department is in the basement. The woman looked at him with a surprised look, but Marcus didn't stop there. I don't know why they moved the office to this area. Probably to meet diversity quotas or something. But really, some people just don't belong in certain positions, you know? The elevator slowly rose, the air becoming suffocating because of Marcus's venomous words. The woman remained silent, just staring straight ahead. I worked very hard to get where I am, Marcus continued, not because of any preferential treatment or privileges. Some people need to understand that just because they are given an opportunity, they don't deserve it. When the elevator stopped on the 24th floor, they both got out. Marcus was annoyed to see the woman walking in the same direction as him. He continued speaking loudly enough for her to hear. It's funny how some people think they can break barriers when they can't. Then they complain about discrimination when they fail. As they approached the main conference room, where a group of people were waiting, an older man stepped out and smiled at the woman. Dr. Ellington. I'm so glad you came. Everyone's been waiting to see you. Marcus felt the blood rush to his face as he realized that the people present were all members of the board of directors. The older man's chairman of the board, John Mercer, continued the introduction. This is Dr. Amara Ellington, our new CEO. She has a PhD in computer science from MIT, has built 2 successful startups, and was just named one of Forbes' 40 most influential tech leaders under 40 this year. Amara turned to Marcus, still keeping her face calm and professional. Thank you, Chairman Mercer. I'm very excited to work with the talented team here. She paused for a moment, then continued, of course, I also look forward to creating a work environment where everyone is judged on their competence and professionalism, not by narrow-minded stereotypes. Marcus stood still, his face pale as he realized what he had done. Amara continued in a calm but firm voice, I believe that our company culture starts with how we treat each other. Respect is not a privilege, it is a basic requirement for working at this company, at every level. The Mercer president looked between the two of them, puzzled. Is there a problem? Nothing serious, President, Amara replied, just a pleasant conversation in the elevator about who deserves what position. Mr. Green here has some, rather unique views on the matter. Marcus felt the ground drop from under him. He tried to say something, but the words failed him. I think we should start the meeting, Amara said, and then I'd like to meet privately with all the department heads, including you, Mr. Green. We need to discuss my expectations for the company culture moving forward. As everyone filed into the conference room, Marcus stood there, stunned. In 5 minutes, he had ruined his career with his arrogance and prejudice. Suddenly, he realized that the accomplishments he had been so proud of might no longer matter. After the meeting, Marcus was called into Amara's office. He walked in feeling like a man walking to the scaffold. Sit down, Mr. Green, Amara said, her voice devoid of any anger, which made Marcus feel even worse. I don't know what to say, Marcus stammered. I'm sorry for what happened in the elevator. It was unacceptable. Yes, it was unacceptable, Amara agreed. But I'm curious, Mr. Green. What makes you believe you can judge someone based on the color of their skin? What makes you believe you know more about my abilities and accomplishments than I do? Marcus bowed his head, unable to meet her eyes. There's no reason. I was wrong. You know, Marcus, Amara said, I've met a lot of people like you in my career. People who were ready to judge me before I even opened my mouth to say a word. But I never let that stop me. And I won't let it stop anyone else in this company from reaching their full potential. She opened a file on the desk. I've looked through your file. You're a capable employee, Marcus. Your performance reviews are excellent. But here's the thing, you've never promoted anyone who wasn't like you. Not one. Marcus felt a slap in the face as he realized the truth of her words. I'm not going to fire you today, Marcus, Amara said. That would be the easiest thing to do, but not necessarily the right thing. Instead, I want you to learn from this. She slid a folder toward him. Here's information about the new diversity and inclusion training program we're implementing. You won't just be participating, you'll be leading it for your department. Marcus looked at her, surprised. I don't understand. Sometimes, Marcus, the best way to overcome bias is to confront it head-on, Amara explained. You'll work with HR to create training sessions. You'll hear stories from colleagues you may never have really listened to before. And you'll learn how to be a better manager, one who sees potential in people, no matter where they come from or what they look like. Marcus swallowed. And if I say no? That's your choice, Amara replied. But I think we all know what that'll be. Over the next few weeks, Marcus reluctantly began the training program. At first, he approached it as a punishment, something to be endured. But gradually, as he listened to his colleagues' stories of how they faced prejudice and discrimination, something began to change in him. He heard one colleague talk about having to prove himself twice as much as anyone else just to be recognized. He heard another person describe what it was like to be treated as a representative of a group of people, rather than as an individual. And he began to realize the invisible privileges he had enjoyed, privileges he had always taken for granted. 6 months later, Marcus stood before a new management team, leading a training session on inclusion in the workplace. He was no longer doing it because he had to, but because he truly believed in its value. I used to think that my success was all about my own efforts, he told the group. But I didn't realize that the world isn't always fair. Some people have to overcome more barriers than others, not because they're less capable, but because the system is designed in a way that's unfair to everyone. From the back of the room, Amara watched with a small smile. After the training, she approached Marcus. You've come a long way, Mr. Green, she said. Marcus nodded, feeling a genuine gratitude. I still have much to learn. We all do, Amara replied. But the first step is to recognize that we have something to learn. As Marcus left the building that evening, he looked around the neighborhood he had previously taken for granted. He saw people, stories, possibilities he had never considered before. And he knew that the person he had been 6 months ago would never have been able to see them. The most valuable lesson of his life came from the most humiliating moment. Sometimes, we have to face the darkness within ourselves to find the light. 2 years after that fateful elevator incident, Marcus is a different person. The diversity and inclusion training program he once reluctantly led has grown into a company-wide initiative widely recognized in the tech industry as a model. But Marcus' transformation goes beyond work. On a spring morning, Marcus looks around the conference room with quiet pride. His team is now a colorful mosaic of talent from all cultures, religions, and backgrounds. Javier, a talented programmer from El Salvador whom Marcus discovered at a tech support program for immigrant communities. Amina, a brilliant data analyst in a job who might never have made it past the first interview with old Marcus. And there are many more, each bringing a unique perspective that enriches the work of the entire team. Has everyone seen the quarterly report? Marcus asked, opening the meeting. I think we can be proud of these numbers. Marcus's team was not only diverse, but it was leading the company in performance, shattering the false belief he had that diversity and excellence did not go hand in hand. After the meeting, Marcus received a text from Amara, asking for a meeting. Now, the anxiety he felt when he was called into the CEO's office was no longer fear of judgment, but deep respect for the woman who had changed his life. Marcus, Amara smiled as he walked in, I have good news. The board has approved our proposal to expand the training program outside the company. Marcus sat down, feeling a wave of excitement. This was a project he had been working on for months, turning the internal training program into a community initiative, expanding to schools and small businesses in the area. "That's great news," Marcus replied. "I've been in touch with a few high schools on the south side, and they're eager for us to host workshops for their students." Amara nodded, looking pleased. "There's something else I'd like to discuss with you, Marcus. I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the entire company." Marcus looked at her in amazement. I don't know what to say. It's a great honor, but I'm not sure I'm the best person for this position." "It's exactly because you think that way that you're the right person," Amara said. "You understand the value of humility and listening. You know that this isn't about you, it's about creating an environment where everyone can thrive." Marcus considered the offer. It would mean giving up the technical role he'd pursued his entire career. But he also realized that the most meaningful work he would ever do wasn't writing code or developing products, but helping build bridges between people. "I'll take it," he finally said. "But I want to make sure we approach this the right way. I don't want to just focus on numbers and targets. I want to make real change." "That's exactly why I wanted you in this position," Amara smiled. 6 months later, Marcus stood on stage at a major tech conference, sharing his story and the program he helped develop. He made no secret of who he had been, of the biases and prejudices he carried. "I stand before you today not as a perfect person," he told the audience, "but as someone who is learning to be better every day." For many of us, especially those of us who enjoy a lot of privilege in society, the hardest thing is not learning new skills or achieving success. The hardest thing is learning to see the world through someone else's eyes and acknowledging that our experiences are not universal. From the front row, Amara watched with pride. Deciding not to fire Marcus that fateful day had been a gamble, but she had seen something in him, a capacity for change, a capacity for growth. And Marcus had not let her down. After the speech, a young student approached Marcus. "Your story really inspired me," she said. "But I wonder, how do we reach people who don't want to change? People who don't have the kind of awakening moment that you had?" Marcus considered this question seriously. It's an important question. The truth is, not everyone will have a dramatic awakening like I did. But I believe that most people have the potential to change if we create environments where they are actively exposed to diverse perspectives, where they can see the concrete benefits of inclusion, not just as an abstract concept but as something that brings real value. A year later, Marcus stands in his new apartment, no longer the luxurious penthouse he once lived in, but a smaller house in a culturally diverse neighborhood where he has decided to move to truly live the values he now embraces. On the living room wall hangs a photo of a group of volunteers at a tech career program for teens he started in the neighborhood. The doorbell rings, and Marcus opens the door to a group of coworkers and neighbors who have arrived for a party he's thrown. Among them are Amara, now not just his boss but also a friend and mentor, Derek, a neighbor Marcus may never have spoken to before, and Sophia, a young woman from the career program Marcus is mentoring. As they gather in the living room, laughter and conversation filling the air, Marcus realizes that his life is much richer now than it was before. Success is no longer measured by fancy cars or expensive apartments, but by the connections he has made, the barriers he has helped break down, and the opportunities he has helped create for others. "I would like to raise a glass," Amara said, standing with her glass in hand. "To Marcus, and to his extraordinary journey." "Not just to me," Marcus replied, "but to all of us. To the courage to face our own biases, and the kindness to forgive those who are on the learning journey." As their glasses clinked, Marcus looked around the room and saw a world he had never imagined, a world richer, more diverse, and more meaningful. A world he had almost missed because of his own biases. 5 years after the elevator incident, Marcus was sitting in his office at the Green Ellington Foundation, a nonprofit he and Amara had co-founded after leaving the tech company. The foundation focused on removing barriers in the tech industry for minorities and creating opportunities for underrepresented people. An email popped up on his computer screen, a message from a local university. The scholarship program the foundation had funded had helped 50 students from low-income communities pursue careers in STEM. Marcus smiled as he read the stories of the students, many of whom were the first in their families to attend college. Marcus's phone rang. It was Amara. "Did you see the news?" she asked, her voice filled with excitement. The bill passed. Marcus felt a wave of joy wash over him. They had been lobbying for months for a bill to increase STEM education in low-income schools. "That's great news," he replied. "We need to celebrate." "I have plans," Amara said. "Tonight at my house. We'll have everyone there." After the call, Marcus flipped through a photo album on his desk, photos from the Foundation's programs. Each face in the photos told a story of potential unleashed, of barriers overcome, of dreams made real. He paused at a photo of himself with a group of high school students at a science fair. One of the young women in the photo, Maya, was now attending MIT on a full scholarship. She had sent Marcus an email last week, telling him about a research project she was working on, a technology that could help detect diseases early in underserved communities. Marcus recalled the first time he met Maya at a conference in her high school. She had timidly asked, unsure whether someone like her, a girl of color from a poor neighborhood, could really succeed in the competitive field of tech. Marcus had shared his own story with her, not to promote himself, but to acknowledge that the tech industry was losing out on extraordinary talent because of bias and barriers. And he had promised her that he would do everything in his power to change that. Now, as he looked at Maya's email, Marcus felt a deep sense of pride, not for himself, but for her and all the other students who had overcome barriers to pursue their passions. He looked out the window, at the neighborhood he had once looked down on. It was now his home, a vibrant community he had become a part of. Local stores, schools, and community organizations are no longer exotic places he wants to avoid, but important parts of his daily life. Marcus opens another folder on his desk, a proposal for a new initiative the Foundation is developing. A leadership training program for mid-level managers focused on building inclusive workplaces. He smiles as he remembers that 6 years ago, he didn't even understand the value of diversity, let alone spend his career promoting it. His phone buzzes again, a text from his adopted daughter, Zoe, a 12-year-old he adopted 2 years ago. "I got an A on my science test. When are you coming home to celebrate?" Marcus smiles and texts back, "I'm proud of you. I'll be home soon and we'll go get ice cream to celebrate." As he put down the phone, Marcus looked into the small mirror on his desk. The face reflected there was no longer the arrogant, prejudiced man he had once been. Instead, he saw someone who had learned the value of humility, of listening, and the power of change. He remembered a quote Amara had shared with him years ago, "The first step is to recognize that we have something to learn." Marcus had not only taken that first step, he had come a long way, and he knew that this journey would continue for the rest of his life. When Marcus left the office at the end of the day, he walked through the neighborhood, greeting familiar neighbors. On the corner, he stopped at a small coffee shop, a place he would never have entered 6 years ago. The owner, an older Jamaican man named Mr. Bennett, had become a close friend. "Have you had a good day, Marcus?" Mr. Bennett asked. Bennett asked, already starting his usual coffee. "A wonderful day, Mr. Bennett," Marcus smiled. "A truly wonderful day." As Marcus picked up his coffee and continued his walk home, he reflected on how our biases can limit not only the opportunities of others but also our own world. That elevator incident that day, a moment that he had felt was the end of everything, was actually the beginning of a new life, much richer and more meaningful than the one he had ever dreamed of. And as he picked up his daughter from school, Marcus knew that the most valuable lesson he could pass on to Zoe was not how to succeed in a world full of discrimination, but how to help build a world where discrimination is no longer a barrier for anyone. "Dad," Zoe asked as they walked home together, "can I invite my new friend over this weekend? She just moved from Syria and doesn't have many friends yet." Marcus smiled and put his arm around his daughter's shoulder. "Of course, honey. We'll make her feel at home." And in that moment, Marcus knew that his journey, from a man filled with prejudice to a champion of equality and inclusion, had become part of a larger journey, one he now shares with his daughter and with everyone he touches every day. It wasn't the end of the story, but just another chapter in a book in progress, a book about the possibility of change, about the power of forgiveness, and about the potential of each of us to become better versions of ourselves. Midway through the 3rd year since the elevator incident, when the diversity and inclusion program had been widely implemented and Marcus was on a path to profound transformation, a new character entered the story, Christopher Weston. Christopher was a newly hired senior executive from a rival company. He was a tall, blonde, white man with a confident demeanor that bordered on arrogance. From day one, Christopher made a strong impression with his stellar work performance, but he also quickly alienated many of his colleagues with his tactless comments and dismissive attitude. When Christopher walked into the boardroom for his first board meeting, Marcus felt a strange sensation, as if he were looking into a mirror of his past self. The way Christopher looked down on some of his colleagues, the way he interrupted female and minority team members, were all too familiar to Marcus. "Honestly, I don't understand why we're devoting so much resources to this diversity program," Christopher said in the meeting, looking directly at Marcus. "I was hired to increase profits, not to do social work." Amara, still CEO, raised her eyebrows but kept quiet, watching how Marcus would react. This was a test, not for Christopher, but for Marcus. "I see your point, Christopher," Marcus said calmly. "In fact, I was thinking the same thing. But I want to share some data. Since we implemented this program, retention has increased by 40%, productivity has improved by 28%, and we've had 3 breakthrough initiatives from our diversity teams that have generated millions of dollars in revenue." Christopher crossed his arms. Correlation doesn't equal causation. There could be other factors. "That's right," Marcus nodded. "That's why I invited you to meet with my team after this meeting. We can go over the data in detail, and I want to hear your perspective on how we can improve these numbers even further." After the meeting, instead of attacking or avoiding Christopher, Marcus proactively approached him. This wasn't an enemy, but a version of himself, a person with the potential to make a difference. "Christopher," Marcus said as they walked toward his office, "I realize we have more in common than you think." Christopher looked at him skeptically. "Really? I don't see any. 3 years ago, I was in your exact shoes, with the same doubts about the value of diversity in the corporate world," Marcus said. "And like you, I was confident that I was right. And now you see the light?" Christopher snorted. "Sorry, but I'm not one to be swayed by emotional stories." "I don't expect you to change your mind after just one conversation," Marcus replied. "But I have a proposal. For the next 6 weeks, work directly with me on the Nexus project. I'm not asking you to support our diversity initiatives, I'm just asking you to observe with an open mind and measure the results by the metrics you care about: efficiency, innovation, and profitability." Christopher thought for a moment. 6 weeks. No promises. "No promises," Marcus agreed, holding out his hand. Over the next few weeks, Marcus spent a lot of time working with Christopher. He didn't use lectures or moralizing, but showed Christopher in action how diverse perspectives actually add value in business. He introduced Christopher to Raj, an engineer of Indian descent with a unique solution to a technical problem the project was facing, to Elena, a Mexican designer who saw a market opportunity that no one else saw, and to other team members, each of whom brought unique perspectives based on their backgrounds and experiences. Over time, Marcus noticed subtle changes in the way Christopher interacted with the team. He began to listen more, interrupt less, and even began to acknowledge ideas from team members that he had previously overlooked. The breakthrough came in week 5, when the team hit a major roadblock on the project. During the crisis meeting, Christopher initially offered a traditional approach, but Sophia, a young African-American employee, proposed a completely different approach based on her experience in her community. "That might actually work," Christopher said after a long pause, surprise evident on his face. "I never looked at it that way." After the meeting, Christopher approached Marcus as they got coffee. "I was wrong," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Not about everything, but about a lot of things. I didn't realize that by only listening to people like me, I was limiting myself." Marcus nodded, recalling his own journey. "The hardest thing was realizing that what we consider objective is actually biased." "I still don't fully understand all of this," Christopher admitted. "I don't think I'm going to become a social justice warrior overnight." Marcus laughed. "I didn't expect that. But maybe you could start by inviting Sophia to your client meeting next week? Let her present her idea?" Christopher thought for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. But if she messes up?" "That'll be my responsibility," Marcus said. "But I think she'll surprise you." And Sophia did. her solution not only solved the technical problem, but also opened up a potential new product line that the client was very excited about. After the meeting, Christopher stood for a long time in the empty conference room, looking out the window at the city. What else did I miss because of my bias? He wondered quietly, unaware that Marcus was still there. We've all missed things, Marcus said, walking toward him. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge now? 6 months later, when the Green Ellington Foundation was founded, the first person Marcus invited to join the board was not Amara or any of his longtime allies, but Christopher Weston. Why me? Christopher asked as they sat in Marcus's new office. I'm still learning about all of this. I still make mistakes. That's why, Marcus smiled. This foundation isn't just for people who are already perfect in their understanding of diversity and inclusion. It's for people who are on a learning journey and are willing to help others learn. And frankly, we need someone who will challenge us, force us to think hard about every decision, and make sure we're not just talking to our inner circle. Christopher thought for a moment. I have one condition. I want Sophia on the board, too. She has a perspective that neither you nor I have. Marcus smiled and extended his hand for a shake. Welcome to the board, Mr. Weston. As Christopher left, he paused at the door. You know, Marcus, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't worked for you. If I had continued on my old path. I used to wonder the same thing about myself, Marcus replied. But it's not who we were, it's who we choose to be. As Christopher left, Marcus looked out the window, contemplating the full circle. 3 years ago, he was Christopher, arrogant, prejudiced, and unaware of his own privilege. Now, he had the opportunity to do for others what Amara had done for him, create a safe space to learn, grow, and change. Over the years, Christopher became one of the Foundation's strongest allies in the initiative. He used his extensive business connections to open doors for students from underrepresented communities, creating internship programs and career opportunities. And more importantly, he became a bridge to people like him, skeptics of the value of diversity but who could be convinced by facts and concrete results. When Christopher and Marcus shared the stage at a major tech conference 5 years later, they were not just colleagues but close friends. They shared their stories not to promote themselves, but to prove that change is possible, that people can grow beyond their biases and become better people. I used to think I knew all the answers, Christopher told the audience. But now I know that real value comes from asking the right questions and listening to voices I hadn't heard before. Marcus looked at his friend with pride. This is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new story, a story about how change can spread from person to person, creating concentric circles of understanding and respect. And perhaps, Marcus thinks, that is the most valuable lesson of all, that overcoming prejudice is not a solitary journey, but a journey undertaken together, step by step, with patience, understanding and faith in the abilities of each person.